Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this webinar tonight. And the summit has just been going so well. There's been such great feedback from all the people that have attended and watched the videos that we've released, and we've just been getting such great feedback. We're waiting on our guest right now, and we have a backup plan just in case there is a no-show. But I'm very excited about connecting with you guys tonight. So just bear with us, and looking forward to delivering all this incredible content. Thank you. See Laura, Patty coming in. I see Steve coming in. I see a bunch of new attendees just coming in. So very, very excited to have you guys on this call with us tonight. We are just waiting right now for Bill Harris to arrive on the call, and as soon as he does, we'll be able to begin. And just in case there's technical difficulties on his behalf, we've got a really, really great webinar set up for you, to deliver in respect to high performance and really maximizing your health moving forward. So very, very excited about this. And in fact, I just had a very long 2-hour conversation interview with Bill, just yesterday. So a lot of really, really powerful concepts are still on the top of my mind. In fact, I've got a bunch of notes here to my right, so I can share those with you while we're waiting for him to arrive. So wait just probably 30 more seconds, and I can kind of review some of those really, really powerful concepts that he talked about, and we'll begin. Thank you, guys.
If you don't mind me hopping in here really quickly, I just want to also say hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie, and I want to encourage you guys to ask us questions, even if Bill doesn't show up, which we're crossing our fingers he does. I know he was kind of out and about traveling, so we're thinking that he might have some difficulties with his internet connection. But either way, we're here to answer any questions that you guys have. So if you have questions about any of the seminars or interviews that you've watched since the summit began, feel free to type those into the chat. And my colleague Jackie and I will be taking down your questions. And like I said, even if Bill doesn't show up, Dr. Jones and I will be here, and we'll be happy to answer any questions on any topic that was covered in the summit so far.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I had a really, really great call with Bill Harris yesterday, and just to prove one of his main points, I actually did HoloSync for an entire hour before going on to before coming on this call, and I literally feel so unbelievable. My brain feels rejuvenated. I had a very neurotransmitter depleting day because of how much work that I had from 5 o'clock in the morning all the way till around 7 o'clock at night, and so it's just an abnormally long day. But from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Or excuse me, 8:30 to 7:30 to 8:30, I did a bunch of the things that he told me about yesterday. I just feel completely like a new human being, which is, I think, a very, very high performance strategy that I'm going to be using going forward. So what he talked about was that most people are controlled by their midbrains. Right, so we've got what we call our midbrain, or what I call our monkey brain, because it's the part of your brain that really controls the various activities and the ways you respond to the external stimulus unconsciously. It's almost like this this response that that happens because of the way that you've been programmed, because of the things that have happened to you in the past. And a lot of people are walking around robotic. They have the same neurostimulating. They have the same kind of responses to certain stimulus, whether it's somebody saying something to them, a spouse, a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, that just gets under their skin, a little comment, and they respond the same way they've always responded. What was so cool about what he talked about was that when you start accessing what he calls executive control, when you start maximizing your ability to access your frontal cortex and start using that control over the automated processes of your brain, what happens is you become what he calls aware. And he says awareness is really powerful, and he says there's roughly 4 things that happen when you become more aware. First of all, you start becoming more in touch with the surroundings. So you become more of an observer, and you can kind of like start seeing what happens in your day, and you're not so much stuck in a rut. You're not so much letting the environment dictate how you feel. You're actually in control of your environment, or excuse me, you're in control of your emotions no matter what's going on in the environment. So that was number 1. You're able to really start controlling how you feel, which is obviously a huge benefit of utilizing this technology. And I'll talk about a lot of the strategies that we talked about yesterday. We literally talked for another hour after our interview, just, which is actually a huge blessing, because if he's not on this call tonight, he can share a lot of these really cool insights with you.
On that note, let me just jump in really quick.
Yeah, sure.
It looks like Bill is going to be on in about 5 to 10 minutes. So,
okay.
Yay, we're all excited about that. So it looks like you're not going to have to debrief his whole interview. He'll be here soon.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll still give some really great information here, and then I'll just fill Bill in on some of the content that I've reviewed up until this point. So, so the one thing that happens when you start gaining this executive control is, obviously I was talking about the fact that you become more aware, and one of the benefits of becoming more aware is that you start controlling how you feel. The second is that you start changing your behaviors. And, a lot of the people that I've talked to in the summit and that I've interviewed, like, Travis Daumert and James Clear, they're experts in habit transformation. But a lot of people, they get stuck in the rut of not being able to do the things that they want to be able to do. They can't change their behaviors because there's just so many ingrained patterns of behavior already in existence. It's just hard to change. Well, when you start to access the power of your frontal cortex through these new technologies that we'll talk about in this call, amazing things happen, and you start being able to change your behavior. So, you hear this whole concept of being, it just changing your habits can take around 21 days. Well, if you listen to Travis Daumert's interview, Travis Daumert was talking about how the research actually shows if it's a more difficult habit, it can take up to 72 days or 61 days. So, depending on the habit, it can take you much longer. But my hypothesis is, and based off of what I talked to Bill Harris, is you can cut learning curves in half, and you can really adopt new habits into your life through utilizing the technology, again, of maximizing the muscle of your frontal cortex and all the benefits that come along with that. So, the third thing is that you really start to take control of situations and the people that you attract into your life. So it was more of like Quantum Point. You've heard of probably the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, or The Law of Attraction, But one of the great things about meditation and becoming a very, very powerful meditator is that you can start creating some amazing things in your life through changing the way that you think, and you start attracting some really powerful things into your life. So I'll just give you an example in my own life. I've always wanted to meet this guy who's a billionaire, who's the #1 healthcare entrepreneur on earth. He built WebMD.com and sold it for $7.6 billion. And he's got just a very unbelievable mind. He has a lot of influence in the world. And I was like, it would be great for me to be able to meet him. And so I'm sitting at a restaurant with my friends, And we're sitting there, and my friend who introduces me to one of his friends that he brought to dinner is this guy's a basketball coach for his son, this billionaire son's basketball coach. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And out of nowhere, I mean, I'm in a huge city, 6 million people, right? So he points to the other side of the restaurant, and he goes, actually, that's him right there. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are the odds that, you know, I've been thinking about this guy. His son's basketball coach is sitting right across from me, and then he shows up to the very restaurant without even knowing that his son's basketball coach was there. And of course, I go over, introduce myself, and we're becoming friends. And I've had some unbelievable meetings with him, and it's kind of just helped me expand my mind in respect to what I can accomplish in really, you know, creating high performance in people. So just as a quick story, last Tuesday, you know, I had 15 minutes with them, turned into an hour and a half, and we're sitting there talking about all these health strategies and solutions and the future of healthcare, this and that. And you know, the new iPhone launched was just a couple months ago, and what was kind of interesting is that his company was keynoted in the presentation for Apple. And what's very interesting about just this whole conversation, and I'll bring this full circle to high performance, is that he's creating a technology for the Apple Watch and for the iPhone that will completely track everything that you could want in respect to understanding the analytics of the biology within your body. So anyways, very exciting stuff, great conversations. Obviously, I'm excited about where that is going to take me. And all that came from me setting goals and making an intention around, you know, around the people that I want to surround myself with. And I think that, again, one of the biggest benefits of utilizing your frontal cortex and being able to access the power of your frontal cortex through, again, the technologies that Bill and I are going to be talking about on this call tonight is, again, just very, very powerful. And the fourth thing is, I would say, probably the most powerful strategy that you could implement into your psychology that will help to completely transform your life. And that is that you have the ability to create a new meaning around any situation that you find yourself in. And I just want Stephanie, you know, actually Stephanie's on the phone, I think, with Bill right now, so I won't get her to chime in. But what this means is essentially that you become in control of the meanings that you choose to assign the situations that you find yourself in, the experiences that you have in your life. So you can have a really negative experience, and like I've had some very, very tough experiences in my life. I'm Canadian, and I've been had some immigration issues, and I was kicked out of the country, if you can believe that. So, you know, that was very challenging because I was a doctor at the time, I was building my business, and I was ripped away from all my patients and everything that I had, my car, everything. And that was a very challenging situation. However, I did not let that get me down. And in fact, I did let it get me down for the first 5 days. I lost around 10 pounds in 5 days, which is pretty crazy for somebody that's already lean. So it did create a lot of stress. But after that 5th day, I started to, you know, ask myself better questions. I'm like, you know what? I'm back living with my parents. You know, it is what it is. I've ran into some immigration issues. I'm going to be able to get this, you know, figured out, and everything's going to be fine. And so I asked, what meaning do I choose to give this situation? And I started choosing much more empowering meanings. And I kid you not, if you just write that sentence down, what meaning do I choose to give this? Is if you ask yourself that question, what happens is you gain executive control over the situation. Now, the situation doesn't necessarily have to control you anymore. You're dictating what learnings are coming from it. If you choose to let that situation or let that comment from that person or whatever it may be actually affect you, and in my case, I chose a much more empowering meeting, which created this online company, and it's helped me to do what I'm doing today and why I'm actually in front of you right now. So again, That's just a small impact that Bill talks about. That when you start to tap into the power of really, strengthening your frontal cortex, you can really gain that unbelievable step. So I believe, Bill, are you with us?
All right, bye, people.
Hi, Bill. It's great to have you on the call. I was just filling them in on how great our video conversation was yesterday, and all the amazing things that I learned about just the benefits of meditation and tapping into the technologies that we're going to talk about on the call. So again, thank you so much for being on with us.
You bet. Nobody really gave me the instructions.
We have Bill here. Bill, you're actually on live with us right now.
Okay.
Can you see us?
Yeah, he can see us. That's no problem, Bill. What I just reviewed with the people here on the call was just first off how amazing our call was yesterday, and the thing that I was talking about is that I experimented prior to the call. Normally I meditate in the morning, and you said one of the best times to meditate is actually at the end of the day, after you've been pushing your brain and your body as hard as you have at work. And today was particularly a challenging day for me. I took your advice, and right before this call for an hour, I did HoloSync, and I cannot believe the difference in my brain and my energy and how I feel. Definitely just skyrocketed my level of performance. And I just want to thank you for that little tip. And so what I was talking about was the importance of one of the biggest benefits of this technology and what it can do for us, and that is that we become more aware. And I went over your 4 points and how awareness actually creates our ability to take control of how we're feeling, to change the way that we behave. We start attracting new situations, incredible situations into our lives and incredible people. And then the 4th thing is that we really are able to assign new meanings to the things that we that we experience in our life, which is obviously very powerful. So that was just kind of a quick overview of what I've just reviewed. Again, we really appreciate you being on the call with us today.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Actually, I would probably say it a little different than the way you summarized it by saying that awareness creates choice, and the 4 areas of life that it creates choice in are how you feel, how you behave, which people and situations you attract or become attracted to, and what meanings you assign to what happens. Generally, those things are being created by a lot of internal cognitive processes we all have automatically. And the idea is to develop enough awareness to observe how you're creating them, which makes them into a choice. Instead of running on autopilot, they become a choice, and once they're a choice, you naturally choose what best serves you, and if you're a little more mature, what serves other people too.
That's incredible.
So that's that's the big value of HoloSync, is that it creates such tremendous awareness that you begin to see how you're creating those 4 things, and to that degree they become a choice. There's no problem with it running on autopilot as long as it's running really well, but everybody gets traumatized by things in life, and in those areas the automatic creation is often dysfunctional.
Right. Our friend David Asprey, he was talking to me about HoloSync and how it's helped him increase the ability for him to go deep in meditation much faster than what he was, utilizing before. And I'd love for you just to talk about how the technology helps you really, strengthen the muscle of your frontal cortex and all the benefits that come along with that. Because I know that there's different nuclei that you talked about in the brain that I'd love for you to also talk about, like the amygdala, and the hippocampus and anything else that you think would be relevant to the conversation. But I'd love to just get into how this really helps with high performance and really all the benefits that David Asprey, Ben Greenfield, myself have experienced through the use of your technology.
Well, when you meditate in a traditional way,
yeah.
You're practicing some kind of one-pointed focus, mindfulness, that sort of thing. And when you do that, there are all kinds of new neural pathways that get created in the brain. And there are several varieties of that. Some of the pathways are created between the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain. So it kind of links the two sides of the brain in a way that isn't there in most people. And so you begin to experience what some people call whole brain functioning, where you're using the capabilities of the left brain and the right brain simultaneously to view whatever you're doing, which gives you a more rich perspective, a more integral, you might say, perspective of everything. So that's one thing that happens, and that improves pattern recognition, creativity, learning ability, all kinds of things like that. But it also just allows you to have a much greater flexibility in how you see things, so that you're not kind of seeing things in a stuck sort of one trick pony sort of way.
Right.
And then you also mentioned another way, which is when you focus, it strengthens the prefrontal cortex. In other words, more neural real estate is turned over to the kind of awareness that gives you executive control. I mean, the scientists, what I call choice, the scientists call executive control, I guess that's the main term they're using for it, willpower, executive control, which is in the prefrontal cortex. A lot of times what gets triggered by our senses goes right to our amygdala, this emotional center, a much more primitive part of our brain. And that means that we might be emotionally reactive in a kind of fight or flight sort of way to something that's happening. If you have more connections to your prefrontal cortex, though, the more modern, more well-advanced part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, steps in and says, no, that is not a danger.
Right.
It might remind you of a danger that you experienced when you were 3 years old or something like that, but it's, it can exercise, or it can say, yes, you're really pissed off at your boss, but if you tell him to fuck off, it might not be a good idea. So exercises some choice about something where you would just go off otherwise.
Right.
So having those connections is really good, and and then there can also be connections with, like you mentioned, the hippocampus, which is kind of a source of memory and other things too. But so as you develop this richer neural network as a result of meditation, all these mental abilities, emotional capabilities, emotional intelligence, and all these sorts of things develop. And Holosync is related to traditional meditation because what we did is map the brainwave patterns that people were getting into when they meditate.
Right.
And found a technological way using various combinations of pure sine wave tones delivered through headphones to change those brainwave patterns, so that instead of having to spend a long time practicing to get good enough to create those brainwaves, you just start creating them right away in a very, very skillful, what your brain sees anyway, is a very skillful way, and you begin getting the benefits.
Wow.
Right away. And the part where you have to learn something to make those changes in your brain, you kind of skip that. And the other interesting thing, though, is that when you use Holosync to make those brainwave patterns, your brain turns over more neural real estate to being able to make those brainwave patterns. So you become really good at traditional meditation without even doing it.
Wow.
So if one of the things that happened to me when I first started doing this, about 3 years after I started using the sort of proto-Holosync before we ever made it public to people, was I went to pick somebody up at the airport really late at night, and there was like nobody in the airport hardly. Everything was closed, and the plane was late, and I had to wait like 2 hours in an empty airport. I mean, there was like no restaurants open, no shops open, nothing. It was just, you know, a few people wandering around. So I said, okay, I haven't meditated in a regular way for 3 years, but I'm going to sit down and meditate just to pass the time. And I found out that my ability to meditate was just light years beyond what it had been 3 years ago.
Wow.
It was all the result of using Holosync. It had changed my brain in a way that made sitting down and focusing in that way easier.
That's incredible. And, you know, so it seems like, I mean, it is one of the most powerful ways to, you know, really decrease stress in your body. I know there's a lot of books now and magazine articles like New York Times and Time Magazine that are coming out and talking about how important meditation is. I know even some 5-star hotels have like meditation rooms that they're starting to come out with in quiet areas of the hotel where you can't talk, and it's more all about, like, you know, meditation. And so, you know, the great benefit that you've talked about is you're creating all these new neural networks, you're creating new connections, and that enables you to create more awareness and, like you said, have a better ability to choose your reality, you know, from moment to moment. And you know, one of the things that I've just experienced today was a complete, it felt like a reset of the neurochemicals in my brain just from doing an hour of Holosync before I got on the call with you. And I'm just wondering, like, is there an increase in dopamine or serotonin, or what's going on there? Because I've worked so hard today, I was depleted, I did Holosync for an hour, and like just following your advice yesterday, and I feel like I just woke up. You know, like it's unbelievable. So I'm just wondering, from a neurological perspective, what just happened there?
Well, there's probably lots of things happening. One of them, which is more mundane than creating more serotonin and more dopamine, is that as you get tired, you know, from working all day, one of the things that's happening is the sodium-potassium balance in your brain. You know, every time these neurons fire, it uses up sodium and potassium, and I think it's even more sodium than potassium. But that gets depleted, and the balance gets off. And if you do like a power nap or something like that, or sleep all night, the balance gets restored, and then those neurons can fire more easily.
Wow.
Certainly, and that certainly happens when you use Holosync too. Also, Holosync does increase serotonin production and production of, you know, a number of other neurochemicals.
Right.
And it also reduces cortisol. So it could be that when you're, you know, at the end of the day, you're making more cortisol, you're a little bit stressed, and then you use Holosync, and the cortisol level drops, and then you feel a little more vital and energized because of that.
I'd love for you to just tell them that one doctor that went to your retreat that then experimented on himself through Holosync and just completely changed all his biomarkers in his body real quick. Just such a cool story.
Well, back in, you know, we don't do these anymore, but we used to do these retreats every 6 months where we'd have about 60 people come, and it was a week-long thing that we put through all kinds of stuff, including listening to Holosync 3 hours a day, 3 times a day for an hour. So people get pretty high by the end of that. But anyway, this very well-known longevity doctor and researcher, Dr. Vincent Giampapa, somehow heard about Holosync and contacted me, and later when we had our next retreat, I invited him to come. He was the president of the American Board of Anti-Aging Medicine, the group that board certifies physicians to practice anti-aging medicine, and he was also the vice president of the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, or I think Academy or Association. It's called A4M,
Wow.
the letter A, numeral 4M. A lot of people. In fact, I was just talking to Daniel Amen today, and he was doing something with them. I forget now what it was, but at any rate, I mean, this guy is a pretty serious guy, and he came to this retreat, and he measured everybody's cortisol, melatonin, and DHEA at the beginning and at the end, and I'm pretty sure I can remember the figures. Cortisol, which is like the stress hormone, the fight or flight kind of hormone, was reduced by, I think it was 45.46%, which was huge.
Oh,
it
wow.
blew. And then DHEA, which kind of counteracts cortisol and is having a lot of it is a sign of really robust health and increases longevity, slows aging. It increased 43 point something percent. And melatonin, which in addition to, melatonin is part of the same chemical cascade that creates serotonin.
Right.
And it also, helps people to sleep, and which has all kinds of benefits, but it's also a hugely strong antioxidant, stronger than vitamin E, for instance. And melatonin went up like 97 point something percent. So that was a real eye-opener.
Unbelievable.
That just in a few days that Holosync would have that big of an effect.
And so, like the benefits are vast. I know, there's probably more benefits than what you could even talk about on the call today. But there's obviously a lot of action steps, like practical things that we could talk about that people could do that we'll definitely talk about on the call. But I'm just wondering if there is anything from a nutrition perspective that does help to maximize brain function and will help with maintaining healthy neurotransmitter profiles within the brain. Is there different foods that you eat on a regular basis or supplements that you take that are really healthy for your brain that help you get into those deep states of meditation and maintain the healthy neural tissue that you have? Because I know you said that you're 65 yesterday, and I couldn't believe that you were. You sound like you're talking like you're very young, intellectual person. Not to say that people as they age can't be like that, but most people just in the reality aren't. So you're living proof. I'd love to hear about some of the strategies that you use.
Well, I eat a very low carb, high protein, high good fat diet.
Yes.
Similar to what Dr. Mark Hyman talks about, to what Amen talks about, to what Dave Asprey talks about. The guy I like the best, really, in terms of diet is Johnny Bowden.
Yes. Yeah.
But I really like Johnny. But I eat a shake for breakfast that has quite a bit of coconut oil in it.
Yep.
And plus some MCT oil, medium chain triglycerides, which is also a lot of that in coconut oil. And it has some blueberries in it, and some a little bit of strawberries, and some coconut milk, and some chia seeds, and what else did I put in that? Protein powder.
Yeah.
There may be something else in there I'm not remembering, but I'm mainly eating protein, vegetables, and a lot of good fats. the myelin sheath that around your nerve axons is a really important part of the transmission of these signals, and so, and then I also a lot of fish oil kind of fatty acid stuff like that. I take lots of supplements.
Yes. Yep.
I was doing that before people were talking about biohacking, for a long time before that. So when I met Dave Asprey and he was showing me all the piles of stuff he said, well, I pulled mine out of my pocket and said, well, this is just one meal's worth here. And he said, but, I just follow all the research on this stuff, and I've always been kind of a doer.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I hear about something, somebody says, hey, if you take choline supplements, your thinking is going to be clearer. So I say, okay, I'm going to try that.
Right, exactly.
I tell some people about it, and they go, oh, are you sure that's safe? And
right.
They're not reluctant to try stuff. I'm kind of more adventurous. I'll try stuff.
So what are some specific nutrients that you've taken that you're like, hey, as a baseline, these are some of the top ones that I would recommend? Like, is phosphatidylcholine one of them, or?
Yes, I take some of that.
Fish oil is obviously very.
Caffeine is something I take. I mean, I take probably 25 at least things a day. I mean, I take a lot of stuff.
You're kind of like, the average 65-year-old is on 20 medications. You're doing 100 push-ups before bed, and you're on 25 supplements. So I think that's pretty unbelievable testimony for how amazing your program has been for you. I think it's.
The thing about taking supplements is just because somebody else is taking this or that doesn't mean you should. Because right. I monitor all this stuff by having taking regular blood panels so that I can see. Like I take a lot of vitamin D, for instance, but every time I have a blood test, I'll make sure to check vitamin D because I want it to be in a certain range. And so, it's better to find somebody that knows a lot about this,
yeah.
and then guide you based on who you are.
Yes.
One of the things that I've noticed about a lot of the biohacking people is that they're so into focus, hyper-focus, being all focused and everything. Some people are over-focused.
Yeah.
Some people have a part, they have a part of their brain that is in charge of focus is going nuts, and they're over-focused, and what they need is something that calms them, like something like GABA, for instance.
Right.
But other people don't have enough energy, and if they take GABA, they just fall asleep. It calms them so much. So you have to. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. So I'm sort of reluctant to say, well, you should take this and this and this and this, because I think everybody ought to be taking fish oil, EPA, DHA kind of stuff. That people should be taking. I take, 8,000 or 9,000 units of vitamin D every day. Yeah. Vitamin D. I never get colds.
Yeah.
Ever. Everybody in my office, the other people, they'll get colds. I never get colds, and I think it's probably the combination of all the things I do. But vitamin D is a very powerful thing for your immune system. I take a lot of anti-inflammatory things, a lot of antioxidant type stuff, a lot of things that are designed to promote better transmission of nerve impulses in the brain.
No, that's great.
More over focused than people, so I take a little more stuff of that's a little more calming.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, as a a functional health practitioner myself, like I do neurotransmitter panels on people. I can see one person is deficient in GABA, other people are hyper, in dopamine or serotonin. So, it is very true that you really do need you really do need a customized approach. And, you're talking about some really great nutrition strategies. If you haven't watched David Jocker's video on ketogenic diet and the things that Bill was talking about there, I'd highly recommend checking that video out. But Bill, I would love to talk to you about just best practices for really getting the best out of HoloSync and really like talking a little bit about this technology and why people really need to get into the habit of using this, because I've read Dan Goldman's book, who wrote Emotional Intelligence, and he wrote a book this year called Focus, and he was talking about how essential meditation is and how it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. So I just love to talk about like what are some practical steps people should be taking, and just talking a little bit about the benefits of HoloSync and what it can do for them.
Well, whenever I'm trying to figure something out or master something, I always try to think about what are the basic fundamentals.
Yeah.
And I think that I have, at least just, I may change my mind as I learn more, but it seems to me that the most fundamental thing in living a human life is awareness.
Yeah.
Because, everybody knows that meditation is good for you, that exercise is necessary, that you should be stretching, for instance, that stretching is very good for your body, that you need to get enough sleep, that you need to eat right and eat certain, not eat certain crappy things and eat more of good things and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Even people that are really convinced that they ought to be doing all those things, a lot of them aren't doing it.
Right.
They get home and I'm too tired to meditate, or I don't want to exercise. They blow this stuff off. In other words, they don't have enough of this executive function.
Right.
The thing about HoloSync that I think is so great is, first of all, it's really passive. You can just put on the headphones, close your eyes, and zone out, and it's giving a stimulus to your brain that's causing it to change and causing you to develop more executive function. More choice is the term that I usually use. Once you have not on autopilot, when you decide not to exercise, or you decide, what the heck, I'm going to eat a donut, or eat something that you're not, it isn't healthy for you to eat, or eat more than you should eat, or whatever choice you're making. That's all happening. If you're doing something that doesn't serve you, that's not resourceful, it's something that's happening on autopilot, and it's something that if you had a choice, in other words, if you were doing it with awareness, you wouldn't do. You wouldn't blow off eating the best diet, or failing to get enough sleep, or not exercising, or whatever. So the more you develop awareness, the more easily you can do all those lifestyle things that you ought to do. And quite frankly, I find when I make a decision, when I decide to do something, I find it really easy to just instantly step into a new habit.
Right.
When I was younger, I used to have a lot of trouble sticking with something that I knew I should do, because things would tempt me, to do something.
Right. And prior to you getting on the call, I was talking about.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah, sorry, Bill. One of the things I was saying is that before you got on the call is that most people think that it takes 21 days to form a habit, or Travis Darmont was talking about, the average, some research showing that it takes roughly 61 days to form a habit. But I really, like, my hypothesis and what I was talking about earlier was that when you can create all these new neural nets in your brain, when you get the benefits of meditation through HoloSync, you get this executive control, you get choice, and you can take that 60 days to form a habit and perhaps chop it in half, or like you said, you adopt those new changes that you need to make much much sooner. Is that something that you'd say is an accurate statement?
Absolutely. You know, this guy Walter Mischel did this thing many years ago called that's colloquially termed the marshmallow test. I think
Right.
did we talk about it the other day?
We,
They took these preschool kids and they offered them one marshmallow now, or if they waited for 15 minutes, they could get two marshmallows. And the ones that could wait ended up they followed them for decades, and they made more money. They had better grades. They had better SATs. They got into better colleges. They had better relationships. All these things, because here's something we didn't talk about. We were talking about that the other day. They found that there is sort of a hot system in the brain, which is really the amygdala, and then there's a cool system, which is your prefrontal cortex. And to most people, they have a temptation, and their hot system gets activated, and they go, "I want it, I want it, I want it." They're very tempted, and people that have a lot of executive control, they either make the cool system stronger, but sometimes it's just a matter of, like a smoker. He might say, okay, I want to have a cigarette now, but he's making the present moment desire stronger than the future desire, which is to not be, getting radiation and chemotherapy for lung cancer, in whatever number of years. And so people with executive control, they'll put their focus on, the long-term benefit that they want. You people that are young, like you, it's hard. I mean, anybody that's, at least my age would tell you this. It's just impossible to imagine what it's going to be like to be in your 50s or your 60s or whatever. Right. It's just impossible to imagine it. And here I am now at 64, almost 65, and it's not at all what I thought it would be like when I was thinking about it when I was your age. Right. But the thing is, it does come, and it does come faster than you think. And you either say to yourself, "Oh man, I wish I hadn't taken all those drugs. I wish I hadn't smoked. I wish I hadn't eaten like a pig, and now I'm fat and overweight and have all these, type 2 diabetes symptoms, blah, all these symptoms of inflammation, blah, blah, blah." Or you say, "Boy, am I glad that I really took care of my," there's this old joke, if I'd known I was going to last this long, I would have taken better care of myself. But, I have to confess, Isaac, I spent 17 years, from the age of 17 till 34, stoned every day.
Wow.
I grew up in a generation that really started all this stuff of drugs being everywhere, and I was stoned every day. And when I stopped taking drugs, when I was 34, I was still 17 emotionally.
Wow.
And I had done a fair amount of damage to my body and my brain. Lehman scanned my brain a year or so ago. He did not see any evidence of the drugs.
Wow.
But it quite a few years and a lot of stuff I had done for my health in the meantime. But I often think, gee, I'm pretty sharp at the age of 64. What would it have been like if I hadn't done that to myself?
Right. Yeah, that's unbelievable.
I was on an airplane the other day, and there was some guy in front of me in first class, and they were serving the meal, or they were about to, and the flight attendant was asking him what he wanted, and he looked like he was about my age, and he was having a real hard time understanding these two choices. I mean, it was not brain surgery what she was asking him to do. And I sat there watching this, and then I thought, this guy is probably been eating an inflammatory diet his whole life and yada, 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 and doesn't know the kind of stuff that we're talking about. And his brain has declined, and he's having trouble tracking what she's saying.
Right.
And And I, thank you, God, for somehow putting me in this position where I at least know about this stuff.
Right. Wow.
I see a lot of people my age that are not very together, and I want to go up and interrupt them and butt in and say, look, you've got to you've got to change how you're doing this.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool that you've developed this. You're like a mad scientist in your basement in the 1980s, creating all this technology. And now I mean, you've sold over $100 million worth of HoloSync, and it's changed millions upon millions of people's lives in hundreds of different countries around the world. And I can see that your mission is to serve people. It's to help transform people's lives. And this interview, we're going to be getting out even beyond this conversation to even more people, so we can help get this life-saving information out to people. But it's so amazing because I've seen those SPECT scans, and I've seen the damage that marijuana does, and cocaine, and environmental toxicities, for instance, on the neurology of the body. But again, there's things that you can do to, physiologically, but also there's things that you can do to really replenish the health of your brain. And again, I think that I've been using HoloSync for the last 6 years, ever since Joe Dispenza, who wrote the book Evolve Your Brain, kind of talked to me about it. And it's been something that has just really been very, very powerful, and helped just increase my ability to, just focus, like you said, that executive control, that ability to have control over your belief system. It's just it's really, really, really profound. So, what are some of the top just research that's come out in the last little while that is really interesting, that you're excited about, that just kind of proves the point that people really need to be, doing this every day, if not, every other day, or just on a regular basis?
Well, there's tons of studies happening all the time lately, and I made a video today about flow states, and a lot of it was about how when people go into a flow state, one of the things that they're kind of deactivating is the posterior cingulate cortex.
Yep.
And that part of the brain, when you meditate, it calms that. That is the part of the brain that kind of distracts you. It's active when you're daydreaming, and if you're working and you can't stay focused, it's because it's very active. And so when people meditate, it calms it. Coincidentally, though, it also gets calmed when you're in a flow state.
Right.
So when you meditate a lot, it makes you much more susceptible to getting into a flow state. So that's one little piece of research that I came across just recently. Then there's a lot of research about meditation and increased executive function.
Yes.
That is certainly there's older research about the brain waves of meditation, and the fact that in alpha states people become relaxed, more focused. That's the brainwave pattern of super learning, where people learn 7, 8, 10 times as much information in the same amount of time and remember it more easily, and so on. And there's a bunch of other things about alpha also. It's the brainwave pattern of joy, for instance. But when you meditate, you teach your brain to make more alpha waves. Theta waves, which are slower, are the brain waves. That's what you're experiencing when you're dreaming, theta waves.
Right.
But also when you go, aha, I get it. When you have a moment of learning where you suddenly go, oh, I get it. You make bursts of theta waves in the brain. When you have let's see, what is this called? I can't think of the name of it, but it's when you when you're seeing a problem a certain way and it just seems insoluble, and then suddenly you have a complete shift in perspective on it, and you suddenly see
Like
the
an
answer,
epiphany.
which is another kind of an aha experience,
Right.
actually. But there's another name for it that I'm just not.
Epiphany? Epiphany?
Right now. No. It's a more scientific name for it.
Oh, okay.
But see, my brain isn't totally. I'm actually pretty wiped here at the end of the day. I
You had
realized
a lot of videos that you shot today. I know you told me that you were.
sort of listened to Holosync, but I left my iPod at home, so I didn't have it here at the office. I probably could have wrapped them up here somewhere because we sell it here, you know.
Yeah.
Let's see, other kinds of and then there are delta waves, which are very difficult to make a lot of. When I was doing EEG biofeedback training, Dave Asprey is talking about this 40 years of Zen in a week thing. I don't know if you've heard him talk about that, but with a guy named Jim Hart who does this really sophisticated biofeedback. I was supposed to be making alpha waves, but I made about 45 minutes of really powerful waking delta waves instead, just to be contrary. And after I got out of this biofeedback chamber, he said that first of all that I was doing that. Second, he said that those were the brain waves that were correlated with what in Eastern philosophy they call a Kundalini awakening, where this energy goes up the spine and opens up all the chakras and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
So that is something that Holosync. Also, he said that the two other people in 30 years that he'd seen make a lot of these waking delta waves were very, very persuasive. That it's kind of creates a charisma and a persuasiveness. And he won't even teach people using biofeedback to make the delta waves unless they have kind of cleaned out a lot of their emotional crap in trainings. Because if you have a lot of emotional crap and you can do this, you can become sort of Darth Vader.
Right.
And use it to manipulate people and use it for sort of evil purposes. So that's an interesting research that not that many people actually know about. It's kind of older research and.
Well, and is Holosync helping you access delta wave more?
We actually have people spend quite a bit of time in delta when they're listening to Holosync.
Wow, that's
which most other brain entrainment approaches don't do, and I think the delta waves are very high amplitude waves. Amplitude is the height of the wave.
Yeah.
And you know, at the beach, the powerful waves are the big ones.
Yeah.
And they come in at a lower frequency, and you see delta waves are very low frequency but high amplitude.
Right.
Whereas beta waves, the ones that people are making most of the time, are very very high frequency, like the little waves that come in frequently at the beach, but don't have a lot of power. So that may be some correlation to this idea of being charismatic and persuasive, and I hope I'm being charismatic enough to prove my point.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
Absolutely.
I think of myself as being charismatic. I'm not trying to. I'm sort of kidding about that, but.
Yeah. No, that's really, really profound. I think that one of the things that Bruce Lipton had talked about in a presentation I heard him talk about. He's a medical doctor from Stanford. He wrote the book Biology of Belief. I'm sure you've heard of him.
I have that book.
Yeah, and he talked about how children between the ages of 0 and 7 are in the imprinting years. They're typically in theta wave, and they absorb like a sponge everything in their environment, everything that's said, and it kind of does create a very solid neural net for the rest of their lives. But it sounds like even as adults, you can really have a big impact in changing your neural networks. You can change your reality. You don't necessarily have to let those imprinting years have controlled you for the rest of your life, like a lot of people think. That you can access these theta waves, you can access these delta waves, you can get out of the beta scatterbrain, thinking that a lot of people are used to on a regular basis. And these are all benefits of HoloSync. So how often do you use HoloSync? I know that you're saying that some people literally don't need to take any time out of the day to get the benefits of HoloSync. There's strategies to use it to get those unbelievable benefits without having to take hours out at a time. But what are some of the best strategies to implement the use of this technology to get the benefits?
I'll answer that, but I want to make a comment on now I lost the thought.
Imprinting. The imprinting.
I was going to say that the goal is flexibility.
Yeah.
When you use HoloSync, we're taking you through this whole spectrum of brainwaves, and so as I said much earlier in this conversation, this kind of has your brain turn over more neurons, more brain real estate to being able to make alpha waves, theta waves, or delta waves, or gamma waves, and which are associated, by the way, with loving kindness and compassion. When your brain has learned how to make those, what happens is it becomes a choice. Not in a sense that you're sitting there and intellectually thinking, let me see, I need some gamma waves right now. But it's just that if you're in a situation where you need to, be creative, you will naturally make more theta waves. If you need to learn something, you'll make more alpha waves. If it's something where you need to connect with people and be more compassionate or something, you'll make more gamma waves. So just by being in a situation and needing to accomplish something, you access the brain states that you need to be in.
Unbelievable.
It's about flexibility. So, sometimes, I was up at the medical school, University of Oregon Health Center. I forget the exact name of it. Up in these hills up above Portland, where I live, near where I live, and I was in their EEG lab, and they were measuring brain waves of some people listening to HoloSync, and they were very skeptical too, because they said, well, when we see delta waves in adults, we think there's some sort of a problem and everything. So there's a lot of people, especially that are working on the sort of dark side of people having these brain problems, that don't really understand that it's not like we want people to be walking around making delta waves continuously.
Right.
We want to have a flexibility in their brain so that whatever the situation is, they can meet that situation in the most resourceful way.
Wow.
So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment. As far as using HoloSync, I think what you're fishing for me to say is I was a traditional meditator, very disciplined traditional meditator. I'm actually a Zen monk. For a long time, 16 years before I kind of latched onto the research that led me to HoloSync. And so when we started telling people, hey, meditate with this, and this will really blow your mind, we were telling people, you need to sit up with your spine straight, in a typical meditation posture, not without a back support. I was fairly rigorous about telling people how to sit and all this sort of stuff. And actually, it probably is a better way to do it to some degree. We've been meditating that way for centuries. However, a few years ago, we've had 2 million people use this all over the world, and sort of a remotely done thing. They're not right here in front of me, so I can monitor the way that they're doing it. And so we had some people like, I don't want to do it. I'm going to lie down and do it, and that sort of thing. And as we began to get feedback from them, and as I met some of them, sometimes at retreats or when I went out to speak, I discovered that they were getting the same results that the people that were being really militant about how they sat and all that sort of thing. And so a few years ago, I finally sort of relented and started telling people, you can do this lying down if you want to. And as a matter of fact, the way I do it now, see, another objection people has is, well, how will I find the time to do this?
Right.
And so
it's what, like an hour?
it turns out that a great way to do this that takes zero time out of your day.
Yeah.
If I want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, first of all, for some reason, I can just tell myself, wake up at 6, and I wake up. I never use an alarm clock, which are sort of nasty anyway, to get jolted out of your sleep. So I just say, okay, I'm going to wake up at 6. At 6, I just put the headphones on, press the play button, close my eyes again, and sometimes I drift off. Most of the time I don't. But then when it ends, an hour later, I take off the headphones and I get up. And I feel alert. And, what you were saying today after you meditated, when you were all wiped out, and then you did it and you're like, wow. Instead of waking up and being kind of groggy and having to come back, immediately when it ended, I am awake and alert and alive and feeling a lot of energy, and I've done my whole thing for the day, and it didn't take any time away from doing anything else.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
So that makes I mean, you can't do that with meditating, traditional meditating.
Absolutely not. And I mean,
if you fall asleep meditating, you're not meditating anymore. You're sleeping. It's nice, but it was meditating.
Yeah, it's huge benefit for sure. And I just I want to be respectful of people's time because it is a little bit after 10, and I just want to thank you, Bill, for investing the time that you have today. Bill we are going to be releasing a video coming up very shortly with Bill. So it's kind of a surprise video that you guys will be able to get access to, where we go into a little bit more detail as to what we talked about here today. So definitely check that out. And Bill, I just want to again thank you because you've built a company that's sold over $100 million worth, and you've got 2 million customers around the world, and you just created this unbelievable brand, and just to connect with us and to just continue to be so about getting this message out there about the mission just shows how just beautiful your heart is. So again, we just thank you for investing the time that you have today with us, and we're really looking forward to spreading this message of what HoloSync can do for people around the world with you. So again, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being on the call.